At my daughter's wedding ceremony, I played a short video. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. The chapel was filled with white roses and soft violin music. 200 guests sat in hushed reverence. My daughter, Caryn, stood radiant in her wedding gown, holding hands with Logan at the altar. The pastor's voice echoed through the sacred space. If anyone has a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your. They say a mother's intuition never lies. Mine had been screaming for 7 years. So when my daughter, Caryn, stood at the altar about to marry Logan, the perfect gentleman, the charming boyfriend, the man who brought me flowers every visit, I did something unforgivable. I stopped the wedding. And I showed everyone what I'd been hiding on my phone. Pastor, I interrupted, my voice cutting through the silence like broken glass. Before this ceremony continues, I need to play a video. Caryn's face drained of color. Mom, what are you doing? The guests gasped. Logan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but I noticed. I always noticed with him. I took a breath that scraped my lungs raw. Saving you. Before the story begins, please tell me which country you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more life-changing stories. That morning had begun beautifully, like any bride's dream. Sunlight poured through the bedroom windows of our home, casting golden light across the hardwood floors. The scent of fresh coffee mixed with the sweetness of roses delivered the night before. Everything felt perfect, fragile and perfect, like glass about to shatter. I had been awake since dawn, moving through the house with quiet purpose. I styled Caryn's hair in front of her vanity mirror, my hands working through the familiar routine of curls and pins. She sat in her silk robe, glowing with excitement, talking so fast I could barely keep up. Mom, after the honeymoon, Logan and I are planning to visit Italy. Can you believe it? And then I'll finally start that consulting position. I smiled and nodded, my fingers trembling slightly as I secured another pin. On the surface, I was the picture of a proud mother. Inside, my heart was a war zone. Logan had arrived an hour earlier to drop off his tuxedo. He stood in our foyer, impeccable as always, perfectly pressed shirt, polite smile, a bouquet of lilies in hand. Pamela, you've outdone yourself with the preparations, he said smoothly, handing me the flowers. Caryn is lucky to have such a devoted mother. Thank you, Logan, I replied, my voice steady even as ice slid down my spine. He kissed Caryn on the forehead, whispered something that made her giggle, and left with that same confident stride, the walk of a man who believed he'd already won. Mom, are you crying? Caryn asked suddenly, catching my reflection in the mirror. I blinked quickly. Happy tears, sweetheart. Just happy tears. She squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with innocence and trust. I can't believe this is really happening. Logan is perfect, isn't he? The word perfect stuck in my throat like a shard of glass. Logan was too perfect. Too polite. Too composed. Too calculated. Any time a man is that perfect, he's hiding something ugly. After Caryn went downstairs to greet her bridesmaids, I stood alone in her empty bedroom. Wedding photos from her childhood lined the dresser, her father holding her as a baby, the two of them laughing at her 5th birthday party. He had died when she was 12, leaving behind only memories, and a secret trust fund she didn't even know existed yet. A fund that Logan knew all about. A fund he planned to steal. For years, I had told myself that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had misunderstood what I'd overheard. Maybe Logan had changed. Maybe love could reform even a man with such dark intentions. But deep down, I knew better. Monsters don't change. They just learn to smile wider. By afternoon, the chapel was filled. Guests whispered about how beautiful everything looked. Caryn's bridesmaids fussed over her veil. The violinist began the processional. I sat in the front row, clutching her bouquet, my phone hidden in the folds of my dress. The same phone that had held a secret for 7 long years. The same phone that was about to end this wedding. As the pastor spoke the sacred vows, my hand drifted toward my phone. My fingers brushed the cool glass screen. The video was already cued, waiting. Caryn glowed at the altar, unaware. Logan stood tall, confident, already imagining his victory. And I, Pamela Hatchett, prepared to destroy the happiest day of my daughter's life, to save the rest of it. The pastor's voice rose. If anyone has a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or. I stood. The chapel fell silent. And in that moment, I was transported back to another afternoon 7 years earlier, the day I came home early from work, the day I heard voices in my kitchen, the day my phone accidentally started recording. 7 years earlier. The memory rushed back with perfect, brutal clarity, every sound, every shadow, every word that changed everything. Back then, Caryn was only 19. She had just started her sophomore year at the State University, studying communications with dreams of becoming a journalist. She was young, bright-eyed, and glowing with the kind of first love that makes the whole world seem softer. She talked about Logan constantly, how smart he was, how ambitious, how he worked at the prestigious financial firm downtown even though he was only 24. "Mom, he's different from other guys," she would gush over dinner. "He actually listens to me. He has goals. He treats me like I matter." I had smiled and nodded, happy to see her happy. Back then, I still believed the world was mostly good. Back then, I still thought love stories had happy endings. Back then, I didn't know what Logan truly was. That Tuesday afternoon in October, I left the community clinic early. One of my patients had canceled, and Dr. Morris told me to go home and rest. I'd been working double shifts all week. I remember feeling grateful for the unexpected gift of time. I planned to surprise Caryn with her favorite lemon cake when she came home from class. I pulled into our driveway at 2:47 p.m. The house looked peaceful, bathed in autumn sunlight. Caryn's car wasn't there, she was still at school. But Logan's sleek black sedan sat parked near the garage. My first thought was, how sweet. He must be waiting for Caryn. My second thought, seconds later, would shatter that innocence forever. I unlocked the front door quietly, not wanting to startle anyone. The foyer was dim and cool. I set my purse on the console table and slipped off my shoes. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Then I heard them. Voices. Low. Hushed. Tense. Coming from the kitchen. My heart did a strange little flutter. Something felt wrong. Logan's voice was different, sharper, colder than the warm tone he used around Caryn. And there was another voice. A woman's voice. Smooth, elegant, unfamiliar. I froze in the foyer. Logic told me to announce myself, to walk in casually and greet whoever was there. But instinct, some primal maternal alarm, told me to stay hidden. I crept forward silently, my stockinged feet soundless against the hardwood floor. I pressed myself against the dining room wall, just out of sight from the kitchen doorway. My breathing slowed. My pulse roared in my ears. And I listened. "You need to hurry this along," the woman said, her tone clipped and businesslike. "Your little girlfriend is too naive to suspect anything, but time is running out." Logan's laugh was low and cruel, nothing like the gentle chuckle he used around Caryn. "Relax, Victoria. I know exactly what I'm doing. Caryn worships me. She'll say yes the moment I propose." "And you're certain about the trust fund?" Victoria pressed. "Positive," Logan replied. "I accessed the estate files last month. Her father left her nearly $2 million, set to be released when she turns 25. Right now, it's locked in a restricted trust managed by our firm. But once she marries me, I can get co-signature access through marital financial consolidation. It's perfectly legal, on paper." My hand flew to my mouth. I bit down on my knuckle to keep from gasping. $2 million. My late husband, Marcus, had left that for Caryn. I had known about a modest trust fund, maybe $200,000, but $2 million. And Logan knew. Logan had access to that information. What about the mother? Victoria asked. Pamela. She seems protective. Logan snorted. Pamela is sentimental and passive. She's a nurse who spends her life taking care of other people. She won't suspect a thing. And even if she does, Caryn won't believe her. I've already positioned myself as the perfect boyfriend, thoughtful, respectful, family-oriented. If Pamela tries to interfere, Caryn will think her mother is jealous or controlling. The word struck me like a physical blow. Sentimental. Passive. He had studied me. Assessed me. Dismissed me. And if Pamela becomes a real problem? Victoria's voice turned icy. There was a pause. A long, terrible pause. Then Logan spoke, his voice so calm it made my blood freeze. Then I already have a solution. What kind of solution? Victoria asked. The kind that makes problems disappear, Logan said flatly. But it won't come to that. Pamela loves her daughter too much to risk pushing her away. She'll stay quiet. She'll smile at the wedding. She'll play the role of the grateful mother-in-law. And by the time Caryn realizes what's happening, the money will be long gone. Victoria laughed, a sharp, satisfied sound. You're more ruthless than I thought. I learned from the best, Logan replied. Now, we need to coordinate the timeline. I'll propose to Caryn within 6 months. We'll have a short engagement, maybe a year. By the time she's 25, we'll have been married for at least 4 years. The trust fund will be fully accessible, and we can drain it gradually without raising red flags. And Caryn? She'll be too in love to notice. And if she does, well, divorce is expensive. I'll make sure the prenup is ironclad in my favor. I pressed my back against the wall, trembling. My legs felt like water. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. This polite young man who brought flowers and called me ma'am, and kissed my daughter goodnight with such tenderness, he was a predator. A liar. A thief. And he had threatened me. I already have a solution. My hands were shaking so badly that my phone slipped in my grip. I fumbled to catch it, my fingers clumsy with panic. The phone tumbled against my palm, and my thumb accidentally swiped across the screen. The camera app opened. The red record button was pressed. I stared at the screen in shock. The video was already rolling, pointed low, capturing the edge of the kitchen doorway at an angle. The audio was muffled but clear enough. Logan's voice, the money will be long gone. Victoria's laugh. Everything. It was recording everything. I should have stormed into that kitchen. I should have screamed at them, thrown them out, called the police. I should have grabbed my daughter the moment she came home and shown her the truth. But fear paralyzed me. What if Caryn didn't believe me? What if Logan spun the story, claimed I had misunderstood, that I was jealous of their relationship, that I was trying to control her? What if she chose him over me? I had already lost my husband. I couldn't lose my daughter too. I stood there in the shadows, phone trembling in my hand, as Logan and Victoria continued talking. They discussed financial strategies, manipulation tactics, backup plans. Every word was captured on video. After what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, I heard them move toward the front door. I slipped into the hall closet, holding my breath, watching through the crack as Logan let Victoria out. She kissed him on the cheek, intimate, possessive. "Don't disappoint me," she said. "I never do," Logan replied. The door closed. Logan checked his watch, straightened his tie, and walked out as casually as if he'd just been waiting for Caryn like a devoted boyfriend. I waited until his car disappeared down the street. Then I collapsed onto the closet floor, clutching my phone, and wept. For hours after, I sat alone in the house, staring at the video on my phone. I replayed it 3 times, each viewing more sickening than the last. I had proof. But proof wasn't enough. If I showed Caryn now, she was too young, too in love, too vulnerable. Logan would deny it. He'd claim the video was taken out of context, that Victoria was just a colleague, that I was trying to sabotage her happiness. And Caryn, blinded by love, would believe him. No. I needed to wait. I needed to watch. I needed to gather more evidence, to let Logan dig his own grave deeper, to wait for the moment when Caryn would be ready to see the truth. It would take time. Maybe years. But I would protect my daughter, even if she never knew I was doing it. That night, when Caryn came home from class, she found me in the kitchen baking her lemon cake. "Mom! You're home early," she exclaimed, hugging me. "I wanted to surprise you," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Logan texted me earlier," she said, her face glowing. "He said he stopped by but you weren't home yet. He's so sweet, he wanted to ask your permission before he proposes." My hands stilled over the mixing bowl. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." She chattered on, oblivious, while I smiled and nodded. Later, after she went to bed, I sat alone in my room, staring at the video file on my phone. I saved it to 3 different cloud accounts. I locked it with passwords. I protected it like the weapon it was. Then I whispered into the darkness. One day, the truth will come out. 7 years. 2,555 days of watching a predator circle my daughter while I smiled and pretended not to notice. 2,555 nights of lying awake, clutching my phone, watching that video over and over until I had memorized every word, every inflection, every cold laugh. 7 years of silence that felt like swallowing glass. Logan proposed to Caryn on her 20th birthday, exactly 6 months after I had recorded that conversation, just as he had planned. He took her to the same restaurant where they'd had their first date, got down on one knee in front of applauding strangers, and slipped a diamond ring onto her trembling finger. She called me immediately, sobbing with joy. "Mom," he proposed. "Can you believe it? I'm getting married." I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady despite the screaming in my head. "I'm so happy for you." Logan had chosen a 2-year engagement. "We want to do it right," he told me at the celebratory dinner he insisted on hosting. "No rushing. Caryn deserves the perfect wedding." He smiled at me across the table, warm, respectful, genuine. I smiled back and thanked him for loving my daughter. Inside, I was dying. Over the following years, Logan's performance was flawless. He became the son-in-law every mother dreams of. He visited our home every Sunday for dinner, always arriving with flowers, roses for Caryn, lilies for me. "Pamela, you work so hard at the clinic," he would say. "You deserve something beautiful." He asked my advice on everything, where to take Caryn for their anniversary, what kind of wine I preferred, whether I thought they should buy a house or rent an apartment after the wedding. He treated Caryn like royalty. Surprised her with weekend getaways. Supported her when she changed her major from communications to business. Encouraged her friendships. Never raised his voice. Never showed impatience. "I'm the luckiest woman alive," Caryn would tell me, curled up on my couch with wedding magazines spread across the coffee table. "Logan is perfect, Mom. Absolutely perfect." And every time she said it, I wanted to scream. I watched her fall deeper in love with him, and it was like watching someone walk toward a cliff in the fog, smiling, trusting, completely unaware of the drop ahead. I saw things Caryn didn't see. The way Logan's smile would freeze when he thought no one was looking. The flash of irritation in his eyes when Caryn talked too long about something that didn't interest him. The way he steered conversations away from his work, his past, his family. "My parents are difficult," was all he ever said. "I prefer to focus on the family I'm building with Caryn." It sounded noble. It was strategic. Once, during a holiday dinner, Caryn mentioned wanting to wait a few years after marriage before accessing her trust fund. I want to build our life on what we earned together first, she said innocently. Logan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second. Then he smiled and kissed her temple. Whatever makes you happy, darling. But I saw the tightness around his eyes. The calculation behind the affection. He was already adapting his plan. 2 years into the engagement, I couldn't bear the weight alone anymore. I contacted a lawyer, Harold Brennan, a family attorney who had handled my husband's estate. I showed him the video in his office, my hands shaking as I pressed play. He watched in silence, his expression darkening with each passing second. When it ended, he sat back in his leather chair and exhaled slowly. Mrs. Hatchett, this is damning evidence. Then I can stop the wedding? I asked, hope flaring in my chest. It's not that simple, he said carefully. This video is 7 years old. Logan's attorney could argue it's fabricated, taken out of context, or even that the relationship discussed is purely professional, financial planning gone wrong. Without corroborating evidence, it becomes your word against his. And if Caryn is in love with him, she won't believe me, I finished quietly. Exactly. He leaned forward. My advice? Wait. Document everything. If he's truly planning to defraud her, he'll make mistakes. And when he does, you'll have a pattern of behavior to support this video. But what if I wait too long? My voice cracked. What if he hurts her? That's the risk, Harold said gently. But if you act now, you might lose your daughter forever. She'll choose him over you, and then you won't be there to protect her when the truth finally surfaces. I left his office feeling more helpless than when I'd arrived. I consulted a digital forensics expert next, a woman named Dr. Chen who specialized in video authentication. I needed to know the recording would hold up if I ever had to use it. She examined the file's metadata, analyzed the audio patterns, and verified the timestamp. This is authentic, she confirmed. Unedited, not manipulated. The metadata shows it was recorded on the date you claimed, from the device you claimed. It would hold up in court. So I can use it? She hesitated. Legally, yes. But... She looked at me with something like pity. If you use this too soon, before there's any actual crime committed, it's just a conversation. Conspiracy to defraud requires action, not just planning. Right now, all you have is two people discussing a hypothetical scheme. So I have to wait for him to actually steal from her? Or wait for a moment when the emotional impact will override legal technicalities, she said quietly. Sometimes the court of public opinion is stronger than the court of law. For years into the engagement, I saw Victoria again. I was picking up dry cleaning downtown when I spotted Logan across the street, standing outside a wine bar. He was laughing, relaxed in a way he never was around Caryn. And beside him, touching his arm with casual intimacy, was the elegant woman from my kitchen that day. Victoria. They stood close, their body language speaking volumes. She leaned in and whispered something. He grinned and whispered back. Then she kissed his cheek, lingering, possessive, and walked away. Logan checked his watch, straightened his tie, and pulled out his phone. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a text to our family group chat. Logan, running late for dinner. Traffic is terrible. See you beautiful ladies soon. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the dry cleaning slipping from my hands. He was still with her. Still coordinating with her. The plan was still active. I could have confronted him right then. Could have taken a photo, sent it to Caryn, blown everything open. But what would I say? Your fiancé was talking to a woman downtown? Without context, without proof of their relationship, it would look like paranoia. I picked up my dry cleaning and drove home. And said nothing. Year 5 arrived, and Caryn started asking why they kept postponing the wedding. We want everything perfect, Logan would say. Your mother raised you to deserve perfection. But I knew the truth. He was waiting for her to turn 25. Waiting for the trust fund to become accessible. waiting for the perfect moment to spring his trap. Then, one evening over dinner, Caryn made an announcement. "We've finally set a date." She was glowing, radiant. "Next June. Right after my 25th birthday." My fork clattered against my plate. Logan smiled at me across the table, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw it, the gleam of victory in his eyes. "Pamela, I hope you'll help us plan," he said smoothly. "After all, you're not just Caryn's mother. You're family." "Of course," I whispered. That night, I locked myself in my bathroom and sobbed into a towel so Caryn wouldn't hear. As the wedding date approached, Logan's confidence grew. He became bolder, more comfortable. One afternoon, when Caryn was at a dress fitting, he stopped by the house to drop off some paperwork. I was alone, organizing the kitchen. "Pamela," he said, leaning against the counter with casual arrogance. "I want you to know how much I appreciate your support. Some mothers might feel threatened by their daughters getting married. But you've been wonderful." The emphasis on threatened was deliberate. I met his eyes. "I only want Caryn to be happy." "Of course you do," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You'd never do anything to jeopardize that happiness. Would you?" It was a dare. A challenge. He was telling me he knew I suspected something, and that he was confident I'd never act on it. I smiled back, my hand steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "Never." He nodded, satisfied, and left. I stood in my kitchen, trembling with fury and helplessness. The final months before the wedding were the worst. Every night, after Caryn went to sleep, would sit in my bedroom with the lights off, watching that video on my phone. Logan's voice, "Pamela is sentimental and passive. She won't suspect a thing." Victoria's laugh. "If Pamela becomes a problem, I already have a solution." I had nightmares about what that solution might be. Car accidents. Home invasions. Sudden illnesses. I installed extra locks on the doors. I checked my car before driving. I varied my routes home from work. I was terrified. Exhausted. Isolated. But I couldn't give up. Because if I broke now, if I told Caryn the truth before she was ready to hear it, I would lose her forever. Logan would paint me as a jealous, controlling mother trying to sabotage her happiness. Caryn would choose him. And then I wouldn't be there to save her when everything collapsed. So I waited. And watched. And gathered my courage. 1 week before the wedding, I sat in Harold Brennan's office again. "I'm going to play the video at the wedding," I told him. His eyes widened. "Pamela, that's the only way," I interrupted. "If I tell Caryn privately, she won't believe me. But if I play it in front of 200 witnesses, family, friends, people who love her, Logan won't be able to manipulate the narrative. The truth will speak for itself." "It could backfire catastrophically," Harold warned. "I know." I met his gaze. "But doing nothing guarantees she gets hurt. At least this way, she'll have the truth. And I'll have tried." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then make sure you have copies of everything. Because Logan will come after you for this." "Let him," I said quietly. "I'm her mother. I'm supposed to protect her, even from herself." The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I sat by Caryn's bedroom door, listening to her breathe peacefully, and whispered into the darkness. "Tomorrow, he thinks he'll win. He thinks he's been so clever, so patient. He thinks I'm too weak, too sentimental, and too afraid to stop him." I looked down at my phone, at the video file that had haunted me for 7 years. But tomorrow, at her wedding, when everyone is watching, when there's nowhere for him to hide. I took a shaky breath. Tomorrow, the truth finally comes out. The chapel fell silent as I walked toward the AV technician station near the back wall. My legs felt like they might give out at any moment, but I forced myself forward. Step by step. Breath by breath. 200 faces turned to watch me. Confused. Curious. Concerned. Caryn stood at the altar, her veil pushed back, her eyes wide with uncertainty. Mom? What are you doing? Logan's jaw tightened. His hand moved subtly toward Caryn's arm, possessive, controlling. Not anymore. I reached the technician, a young man named Marcus who had set up the slideshow presentation for the reception. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. I need you to play this, I said quietly, unlocking the device and pulling up the video file. On the main screen. Full volume. Marcus glanced at the phone, then at me, confusion written across his face. Ma'am, I don't understand. The slideshow isn't scheduled until. Please. My voice cracked. Just, trust me. This is important. Something in my expression must have convinced him. He nodded slowly, took the phone, and connected it to the projection system. The massive white screen behind the altar flickered to life. The wedding guests murmured, shifting in their seats. The officiant stepped back, uncertain. Caryn's bridesmaids exchanged confused glances. Pamela, what is this? Logan called out, his voice tight with controlled anger. This isn't the time for. It's exactly the time, I interrupted, my voice stronger now. Everyone here came to witness a marriage. They deserve to know the truth about the man my daughter is about to marry. Logan's face went pale. For the first time in 7 years, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Good. The screen brightened. The timestamp appeared in the corner, October 17, 2018, 2:47 p.m. And then the voices began. The audio quality was slightly muffled but perfectly clear. The angle showed the edge of my kitchen doorway, captured accidentally but providentially. Victoria's voice, you need to hurry this along. Your little girlfriend is too naive to suspect anything, but time is running out. A collective gasp rippled through the chapel. Caryn's hand flew to her mouth. What is this? Logan's voice, cold, calculating, nothing like the gentle tone everyone knew. Relax, Victoria. I know exactly what I'm doing. Caryn worships me. She'll say yes the moment I propose. The chapel erupted in shocked murmurs. People leaned forward in their seats, straining to hear. Victoria, and you're certain about the trust fund? Logan, positive. I accessed the estate files last month. Her father left her nearly $2 million, set to be released when she turns 25. Right now, it's locked in a restricted trust managed by our firm. But once she marries me, I can get co-signature access through marital financial consolidation. It's perfectly legal, on paper. Oh my God, someone whispered from the third row. Caryn staggered backward, her bouquet falling from her hands and scattering white roses across the altar steps. No. No, this can't be. Victoria, what about the mother? Pamela. She seems protective. Logan's laugh, cruel, dismissive. Pamela is sentimental and passive. She's a nurse who spends her life taking care of other people. She won't suspect a thing. And even if she does, Caryn won't believe her. I've already positioned myself as the perfect boyfriend, thoughtful, respectful, family-oriented. If Pamela tries to interfere, Caryn will think her mother is jealous or controlling. The words hung in the air like poison. I watched Caryn's face crumble. Watched 7 years of love and trust shatter in real time. The chapel descended into chaos. This is sick, someone shouted. Turn it off, an elderly woman cried, covering her ears. But the video played on. Victoria, and if Pamela becomes a real problem? A long, terrible pause. Logan, then I already have a solution. Screams. Actual screams from several guests. A woman in the back row sobbed openly. 2 groomsmen stood frozen, their faces white with shock. Caryn sank to her knees, her designer wedding gown pooling around her like a broken cloud. Stop it. Please, stop it. But she wasn't talking to me. She was staring at Logan, begging him to tell her it wasn't real, that there was some explanation. He said nothing. Just stood there, his perfect mask finally cracking. Victoria, you're more ruthless than I thought. Logan, I learned from the best. Now, we need to coordinate the timeline. I'll propose to Caryn within 6 months. We'll have a short engagement, maybe a year. By the time she's 25, we'll have been married for at least 4 years. The trust fund will be fully accessible, and we can drain it gradually without raising red flags. He's a monster, Caryn's college roommate whispered, tears streaming down her face. Victoria, and Caryn? Logan, she'll be too in love to notice. And if she does, well, divorce is expensive. I'll make sure the prenup is ironclad in my favor. The final words echoed through the chapel like a death sentence. Then silence. The video ended. For 3 long seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Logan exploded into motion. That video is fake, he roared, his composure completely shattered. She manipulated it. She doctored the audio. This is. He lunged toward me, his face twisted with rage. You vindictive, pathetic. 2 ushers, Caryn's cousins, both former college football players, intercepted him before he reached me. They grabbed his arms and held him back as he struggled. Get your hands off me. Logan snarled. That woman has been trying to sabotage our relationship for years. She's jealous. She can't stand to see her daughter happy. Happy? I said quietly, my voice cutting through his fury. You threatened to kill me, Logan. On that recording. I already have a solution. What did that mean? How exactly were you planning to get rid of me? He froze, realizing his mistake. The chapel had gone deathly silent again. Everyone was staring at him, waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. Caryn, listen to me. Logan's voice shifted, becoming the gentle, loving tone she knew. Desperate. Manipulative. Baby, please. This is all a misunderstanding. That conversation was taken out of context. Victoria is just a colleague. Don't. Caryn's voice was raw, broken. She stood slowly, her entire body shaking. Don't you dare call me baby. Don't you dare use that voice with me. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. Her hands trembled as she pulled the engagement ring from her finger. 7 years, she whispered. 7 years of my life. Every kiss. Every, I love you. Every promise you made. It was all a lie. All of it. Caryn, no. Was I ever anything more than a bank account to you? Her scream echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Did you ever, even once, actually love me? Logan opened his mouth. Closed it. His eyes darted around the chapel, searching for an escape, an excuse, anything. But there was nothing. His silence was the only answer she needed. You're pathetic, Caryn said, her voice hollow. You spent 7 years playing a role. Pretending. Lying to my face every single day. And for what? Money? It's not what you think, Logan started. Then what is it? She demanded. Explain that video, Logan. Explain the trust fund will be fully accessible. Explain I already have a solution for my mother. Explain. He couldn't. His jaw worked, but no words came out. The confident, charming man who had fooled everyone for 7 years was gone. In his place stood a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. One of Caryn's bridesmaids stepped forward. I saw you, she said shakily. 2 months ago. At the Riverside Hotel. With a woman. I thought maybe it was work, or maybe I was wrong about what I saw, but... Another voice from the crowd, I saw him too. Last year. Same woman. They were at the symphony together. And at Marcelo's restaurant, someone else added. They were holding hands. The witnesses kept coming. People who had seen Logan with Victoria over the years but hadn't said anything, hadn't wanted to believe, hadn't wanted to cause trouble. Now, the truth cascaded like an avalanche. Where is she? I asked, scanning the crowd. Victoria. She was on the guest list. I saw her name. There was a commotion near the back of the chapel. An elegant woman in a navy dress stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. Victoria. Leaving so soon? I called out. Every head turned. She froze, her face pale but defiant. I have nothing to say to any of you. Really? I walked down the aisle toward her. Because you had plenty to say 7 years ago. About draining my daughter's trust fund. About making me disappear. Care to elaborate? That recording is illegally obtained, she snapped, her lawyer instincts kicking in. And it proves nothing. Conversations about hypothetical scenarios aren't crimes. But fraud is, said a deep voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit stepped into the chapel, Harold Brennan, my attorney, accompanied by 2 police officers. Victoria Mendez, Harold said calmly. These officers would like to ask you some questions about your involvement in a conspiracy to commit financial fraud. And Logan Matthews, you're welcome to join the conversation. Voluntarily, of course. Victoria's composure shattered. She looked at Logan, panic in her eyes. Logan looked back, and I saw it. The silent communication between conspirators realizing their plan had failed. This is harassment, Victoria hissed. But her voice wavered. This is justice, I replied. Caryn walked slowly down the aisle, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost. She stopped in front of Logan, her face streaked with tears but her eyes burning with betrayal. Did you ever love me? She asked quietly. Even a little bit? Logan looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the video played. And he said nothing. That silence destroyed her more than any confession could have. Caryn pulled the engagement ring from where it had fallen in the folds of her dress and pressed it into his palm. We're done, she whispered. The wedding is off. The relationship is over. And if you ever come near me or my mother again, I'll make sure everyone you know sees that video. Your firm. Your colleagues. Your future victims. She turned to the chapel full of witnesses. This wedding is cancelled. I'm sorry you all came for nothing. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart, her aunt called from the 3rd row. We're just glad you found out before it was too late. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Caryn turned to me, her face crumpling. Mom. I opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I held her tight, stroking her hair, whispering the words I'd held back for 7 years. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I had to do it this way. But I couldn't let him hurt you. I couldn't. You knew, she sobbed into my shoulder. You knew for 7 years? I recorded that video the day I came home early from work. I've been carrying it ever since, waiting for the right moment. Waiting for a time when you'd believe me. She pulled back, looking at me with red, swollen eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you loved him, I said gently. And I was terrified you'd choose him over me. That I'd lose you forever. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I would have hated you. I know. I would have cut you out of my life. I know. But you did it anyway. Her voice broke. You risked everything to save me. I cupped her face in my hands, wiping away her tears with my thumbs. You're my daughter. I would risk anything for you. I would endure anything. 7 years of silence. 7 years of watching him manipulate you. 7 years of nightmares. All of it was worth it if it meant protecting you. Caryn threw her arms around me again, holding on like I was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. "Mom," she whispered. "You saved my life." Behind us, the police were escorting Logan and Victoria out of the chapel for questioning. The guests were standing, embracing each other, crying, and talking in hushed, shocked tones. But I barely noticed. All that mattered was the daughter in my arms. Safe. Free. Finally seeing the truth. "What do I do now?" Caryn asked, her voice small and lost. "Now?" I pulled back and looked into her eyes. "Now you heal. You grieve. You get angry. You move forward. And you never, ever let anyone make you doubt your worth again." She nodded, tears still falling. "And Mom will be right here," I added softly. "Every step of the way." Caryn managed a trembling smile through her tears. "Thank you. For not giving up on me. For loving me enough to wait. Always," I whispered. We stood together in that chapel, surrounded by the ruins of a wedding that would never happen, witnessed by a crowd that had come expecting celebration but found revelation instead. And for the first time in 7 years, I could finally breathe. The truth was out. My daughter was safe. And the nightmare was over. The police didn't wait for the chapel to clear. Detective Rachel Morrison and her partner, Officer Chen, approached Logan and Victoria with practiced efficiency. Around us, wedding guests still sat in stunned silence, some crying, others whispering urgently into their phones. "Mr. Matthews, Ms. Mendez," Detective Morrison said calmly. "We need you to come down to the station for questioning regarding allegations of conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to confidential financial records." Logan's face had gone ashen. The charming mask he'd worn for 7 years had completely disintegrated, leaving behind a desperate, cornered man. "This is absurd," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I haven't done anything illegal. That video proves nothing." "The video is just the beginning, Mr. Matthews," Detective Morrison interrupted. "We've been building a case for the past 3 months based on information Mrs. Hatchett provided. Financial records. Digital footprints. Communications between you and Ms. Mendez. You left quite a trail." Victoria's face went white. "I want my lawyer." "That's your right," Officer Chen said. "You can call from the station." As they led Logan and Victoria toward the chapel doors, Caryn watched from my arms, her body rigid with shock. She didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared as the man she'd planned to marry was escorted away like a criminal. Because that's exactly what he was. By the time the police cars pulled away, half the wedding guests had their phones out. I watched the videos being recorded, the frantic text messages being sent, the social media posts being drafted. Within hours, the story would be everywhere, a cautionary tale of deception, manipulation, and a mother's desperate intervention. "This is going to be all over town by tonight," Caryn's maid of honor, Jessica, said softly, approaching us. "I'm so sorry, Caryn." Caryn nodded numbly. "Everyone will know. Everyone will talk about me. The stupid girl who almost married a con artist." "No," I said firmly, turning her to face me. "They'll talk about the strong woman who escaped a predator. They'll talk about how brave you were to call off the wedding in front of everyone. They'll talk about your courage." But I knew the truth would be more complicated. Some people would sympathize. Others would gossip. And Caryn would have to face all of it. That night, Caryn stayed at my house. We didn't even discuss it. She simply climbed into my car after the chapel emptied, still wearing her wedding dress, and stared out the window in silence during the entire drive home. Once inside, she walked straight to her childhood bedroom, the room I'd kept exactly as she'd left it when she moved out for college. She stood in the doorway, looking at the lavender walls covered in old photos, the bookshelf filled with her favorite novels, the stuffed animals arranged on the window seat. Then she collapsed. Not physically. Emotionally. She sank to the floor in a puddle of white silk and tulle, wrapped her arms around her knees, and screamed. A raw, primal sound of pure anguish that tore through the house and broke my heart into pieces. I sat beside her on the carpet and held her while she sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for hours, through sunset, through dinner time, through the darkness that filled the room. 7 years, she kept repeating. 7 years of my life. Gone. Wasted. Not wasted, I whispered, rocking her gently. You learned. You grew. You loved, even if you didn't deserve it. That capacity for love is your strength, not your weakness. I feel so stupid, Mom. So incredibly stupid. How did I not see it? Because he was exceptional at hiding it, I said. He fooled everyone, sweetheart. Even me, at first. These people are professionals at manipulation. It's not your fault. But she didn't believe me. Not yet. The days that followed were the darkest I'd ever witnessed. Caryn barely ate. Barely slept. She'd wake up screaming from nightmares where Logan's face morphed into something monstrous, where the wedding video played on an endless loop, where she signed away her entire inheritance while Victoria laughed in the background. I called in sick to work for the first time in 15 years. My daughter needed me, and nothing else mattered. I cooked her favorite meals, chicken soup, grilled cheese sandwiches, chocolate chip cookies, and sat with her while she picked at the food listlessly. I slept in her room, in the twin bed across from hers, listening to her cry in the darkness. Sometimes she'd crawl into bed with me like she had as a child, curling against my side while I stroked her hair and hummed old lullabies. I don't know who I am anymore, she confessed one night. I spent 7 years building my identity around being Logan's girlfriend. Logan's fiancé. The future Mrs. Matthews. Now, who am I? You're Caryn Elizabeth Hatchett, I said firmly. You're brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than you know. You're my daughter. And you're going to survive this. How do you know? Because you're already surviving it. Every breath you take, every tear you cry, every moment you keep going, that's survival. And eventually, survival becomes healing. While Caryn grieved, the investigation accelerated. Harold Brennan called me 3 days after the wedding with an update. The police executed a warrant on Logan's computer and phone, he said. What they found is damning. He explained that Logan had been accessing Caryn's trust fund files for nearly 6 years, long before he should have had any legal authority to view them. He'd used his position at the financial firm to bypass security protocols, claiming he needed the information for routine client verification. But the digital trail showed something far more sinister. He downloaded every document related to her father's estate, Harold continued. Account numbers, investment portfolios, distribution schedules. He knew exactly how much money she'd inherit and exactly when it would become accessible. Can they prove intent? I asked. That's where it gets interesting. They found emails between Logan and Victoria dating back 8 years, to before he even met Caryn. They were planning this from the beginning. My blood ran cold. He targeted her specifically? It appears so. Victoria worked at the firm that managed your late husband's estate. She identified Caryn as a potential target, young, wealthy, trusting. She introduced Logan to Caryn at that charity event, making it seem like a coincidence. I remembered that night. Caryn had been so excited, gushing about the handsome, charming man she'd met who shared her love of classical music and Italian food. It had all been orchestrated. There's more, Harold said. The messages discuss you explicitly. Logan wrote about needing to neutralize the mother's influence and create dependence. He documented his entire strategy, how to isolate Caryn from friends who might be suspicious, how to present himself as indispensable, how to gradually shift her financial decisions to favor him. And the threat against me? My voice was barely a whisper. Harold hesitated. They found drafts of life insurance policies he planned to take out on you once you became family. Listed himself as beneficiary. The messages suggest he was researching accidents. Untraceable methods. The room spun. I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter. He was going to kill me. We believe he was planning to, Harold said gently. Once Caryn's trust fund was drained, you would have been the only obstacle to him disappearing with the money. The policies would have paid out on your death, giving him an additional payout. I wanted to vomit. For days after the wedding, Victoria broke. Detective Morrison called me personally to share the news. Ms. Mendez has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's providing testimony about the entire conspiracy. Victoria's confession filled in the remaining gaps. She and Logan had been partners, professional and romantic, for over a decade. They'd run similar schemes 3 times before, targeting wealthy young women from affluent families. The pattern was always the same: identify the target, engineer a meeting, build a long-term relationship, gain access to finances, drain the accounts, and disappear. What happened to the other women? I asked, dreading the answer. 2 of them lost significant amounts of money but survived the experience. The third. Detective Morrison paused. She died in a car accident 2 weeks after Logan disappeared with her inheritance. The case was ruled an accident, but Victoria's testimony suggests otherwise. My knees gave out. I sat heavily in the nearest chair. Logan was a murderer. And Caryn had been his next victim. I debated whether to tell Caryn everything. Part of me wanted to protect her from the full horror of what she'd escaped. But she deserved the truth. 1 week after the wedding, I sat with her in the living room and explained what the investigation had uncovered. She listened in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, she stood abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the street. He was going to kill you, she said flatly. After he took my money, he was going to murder you. We don't know for certain. Don't, she interrupted, her voice shaking. Don't try to soften it, Mom. That's what the evidence shows. He was going to drain my trust fund, take out insurance policies on you, and then, make it look like an accident. Tears streamed down her face, but she wasn't sobbing anymore. This was different, a cold, horrified understanding. I almost married a murderer. But you didn't, I said, moving to stand beside her. You're safe. I'm safe. He's in custody, and he's going to face justice. She turned to me, her eyes red and haunted. You saved both our lives. If you hadn't played that video, if you'd stayed silent. I couldn't stay silent, I said simply. You're my daughter. Late that night, after Caryn finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I sat alone in my bedroom and let myself process everything. 7 years. 7 years of living in fear. 7 years of watching a predator circle my daughter. 7 years of carrying a secret so heavy it nearly crushed me. I pulled out my phone and opened the video one last time. Logan's voice, cold and calculating, filled my bedroom. Pamela is sentimental and passive. She won't suspect a thing. I smiled grimly and deleted the file. You were wrong, I whispered into the darkness. I suspected everything. And I was never passive, I was patient. There's a difference. I thought about all the times I'd almost broken. Almost confessed. Almost played the video too soon. But I'd waited. Because protecting Caryn meant not just saving her from Logan, it meant saving her in a way she could accept. If I'd shown her the video years ago, she would have rejected it. Rejected me. And Logan would have won by default. I kept the truth hidden for years, I said aloud, testing the words. But it saved her. And despite the nightmares, despite the fear, despite the crushing weight of that secret, I would do it all again. Because that's what mothers do. We carry the unbearable so our children don't have to. 2 weeks after the wedding that never happened, Caryn asked me to help her find a therapist. I need to talk to someone, she said. Someone who can help me process this. Understand why I missed the signs. Learn how to trust again. That's incredibly brave, I told her. I don't feel brave. I feel broken. Broken things can be repaired, I said. And sometimes, they're stronger at the fracture points. She managed a small smile. Where did you read that? A greeting card? Probably, I admitted, and we both laughed, genuine laughter, for the first time since the wedding. It was a small sound, fragile and brief, but it was hope. Dr. Sarah Chin came highly recommended, a trauma specialist who worked with victims of manipulation and emotional abuse. Caryn started seeing her twice a week. Slowly, so slowly, I began to see changes. Caryn started eating regularly again. Started sleeping through the night. Started responding to text messages from friends who'd been checking on her. She cut her hair, a dramatic change from the long waves Logan had loved to the shoulder-length bob she'd always wanted but he'd discouraged. He used to say long hair was more feminine, she told me, examining her reflection. I liked it short. But I changed it for him. How does it feel now? I asked. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Like me. 3 weeks after the wedding, the district attorney formally charged Logan Matthews and Victoria Mendez with conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, attempted grand larceny, and in Logan's case, suspicion of murder in connection with his previous victim's death. The trial wouldn't happen for months, possibly years. But the wheels of justice were finally turning. Harold warned me that Logan's legal team would likely attack my credibility, question the video's authenticity, and paint me as an obsessive, controlling mother. Let them, I said. The truth speaks for itself. Caryn surprised me by offering to testify. I want to, she said firmly when I tried to talk her out of it. I want to stand up in court and tell everyone exactly what he did. How he manipulated me. How he isolated me from friends who asked questions. How he made me feel like I was the luckiest woman alive while he was planning to destroy me. It will be painful, I warned. Good, she said, her jaw set. Pain means I'm still here. Still fighting. Still alive. My strong, brilliant daughter. 1 month after the wedding, Caryn and I sat together on the back porch, watching the sunset. She'd just returned from her therapy session, and something in her posture had shifted, less defeated, more determined. Dr. Chen asked me what I want my life to look like now, Caryn said quietly. Without Logan. Without the wedding I'd been planning. Without the future I thought I had. What did you tell her? Caryn turned to me, and I saw strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I told her I want to help other women. Women like me who are targeted by men like Logan. I want to finish my business degree and work in financial literacy education. Teach young women how to protect themselves, how to recognize manipulation, how to maintain control of their own assets. Pride swelled in my chest. That's an incredible goal. Logan thought I was stupid, she said. Naive. An easy mark. And maybe I was, back then. But I'm not anymore. She took my hand, squeezing gently. Mom, she said softly. I'm ready to rebuild. I squeezed back, tears streaming down my face. Then let's rebuild together. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The nightmare wasn't over, there would still be hard days ahead, court proceedings, public scrutiny, moments of doubt and grief. But for the first time in 7 years, I felt hope. Real, genuine hope. My daughter was safe. The truth was known. And we were finally free. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my new home, casting golden light across the hardwood floors I'd carefully chosen. This house was smaller than the one I'd shared with Richard, the one where Caryn had grown up, the one that held 20 years of memories, both beautiful and painful. But it was mine. Fresh. Unburdened. I'd sold the old house 6 months ago, unable to walk through those rooms without remembering Logan sitting at our dinner table, smiling his charming smile while plotting destruction. Every corner held a ghost of the nightmare we'd survived, and I needed to let it go. Caryn had understood. New chapter, new house, she'd said, helping me pack boxes. We're both starting over, Mom. And we were. I poured myself coffee and stepped onto the small back patio, breathing in the crisp October air. The garden was still young. I'd planted it myself in the spring, but the roses were blooming, defiant bursts of red and yellow against the autumn chill. My phone buzzed with a text from Caryn. Heading to the office early today. Big presentation to the board. Wish me luck. Love you. I smiled and typed back, you don't need luck. You're brilliant. They're lucky to have you. Love you more. The past year had transformed my daughter. After months of intensive therapy with Dr. Chin, Caryn had returned to work at her marketing firm with renewed purpose. She'd thrown herself into her career with an intensity I'd never seen before, earning 2 promotions in 8 months and landing major clients who specifically requested her strategic insight. But more than professional success, she'd rediscovered herself. The confident, joyful young woman I'd raised, the one who'd slowly disappeared during 7 years with Logan, had re-emerged. She cut her hair shorter still, embracing a sleek pixie cut that made her look sophisticated and powerful. She took salsa dancing classes, joined a book club, reconnected with old friends Logan had subtly encouraged her to distance herself from. She was thriving. Just last week, she'd called me, breathless with excitement. Mom, I met someone. My stomach had clenched instinctively. Oh. Don't worry, she'd laughed, reading my hesitation perfectly. I'm not rushing into anything. We've been on 3 dates. He's kind, funny, works as a pediatric nurse, and has absolutely no idea who my father was or how much money I have. Dr. Chen thinks I'm ready to try dating again, slowly and carefully. What do you think? I'd asked. I think. I'm terrified. But also hopeful. And I trust myself now in a way I didn't before. If something feels wrong, I'll walk away. I won't ignore red flags ever again. That's all I could ever ask, I'd told her. Because the truth was, I couldn't protect her from everything. But I could trust that the lessons learned from Logan's betrayal, as devastating as they'd been, had made her stronger, wiser, more discerning. She would be okay. 3 months ago, Caryn had called a family meeting, just the 2 of us, sitting in my new living room with tea and cookies. I've been thinking about Dad, she'd said. About his legacy and what he would have wanted his money to do. Richard had been gone for 8 years, but his presence still lingered in the values he'd instilled in our daughter: generosity, integrity, education. I want to use part of my trust fund to establish a scholarship, Caryn continued. The Richard Hatchett Memorial Scholarship for Financial Literacy and Business Education. Specifically for young women from low-income backgrounds who want to pursue careers in finance or entrepreneurship. Tears had filled my eyes. Your father would be so proud. I'm partnering with the local community college, she explained, her eyes bright with passion. We'll provide full tuition, books, and mentorship. And part of the curriculum will include education about financial manipulation, predatory relationships, and how to protect yourself from people like Logan. You're turning your pain into purpose, I'd said. I'm trying to, she'd replied. Logan wanted to steal Dad's money for himself. Instead, it's going to help dozens of women build independent, secure futures. That feels like the best revenge possible. The scholarship had launched last month with an endowment of $200,000, a fraction of what Logan had tried to steal, but enough to change lives. The first class of 5 recipients had been selected, and Caryn personally met with each one, sharing her own story of manipulation and survival. If my experience can help even one woman recognize warning signs and walk away, she'd told the local newspaper, then something good came from it. Richard would have been so incredibly proud. Logan and Victoria's trial had concluded 4 months ago, after 8 months of legal proceedings that dominated local news and social media. I'd sat through every day of testimony, watching Logan's legal team try to paint him as a devoted boyfriend unfairly accused by a controlling, paranoid mother. They'd attacked the video's authenticity, questioned my motives, suggested I'd fabricated evidence because I disapproved of my daughter's choice. But the evidence was overwhelming. The financial records. The emails. The messages between Logan and Victoria spanning nearly a decade. The testimony from 2 previous victims who'd lost their savings to Logan's schemes. The forensic analysis of Logan's computer showing he'd researched untraceable accidents and life insurance beneficiary payouts shortly before proposing to Caryn. And most damning of all, Victoria's confession. She'd testified for the prosecution, detailing every aspect of their operation. How they'd identified targets. How they'd engineered meetings. How they'd isolated victims and gained financial access. How they'd planned to drain Caryn's trust fund over 2 years before disappearing. And yes, how Logan had discussed eliminating the mother obstacle once Caryn's money was secured. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. Caryn had testified during the trial, a powerful, heartbreaking victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears. Logan Matthews didn't just try to steal my money, she'd said, her voice steady despite her tears. He tried to steal my identity. My autonomy. My future. He tried to kill my mother, the person who loved me most in this world. And he almost succeeded because I trusted him. I loved him. And he weaponized that love against me. She'd looked directly at Logan during her statement. You will spend decades in prison. I will spend the rest of my life free, building the future you tried to destroy. In the end, I won. Logan had stared at his hands, unable to meet her eyes. Justice wasn't perfect. It couldn't erase the trauma or return the 7 years Caryn had lost. But it was something. A closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. I sat on my patio, cradling my coffee, and allowed myself to reflect on everything we'd survived. For 7 years, I'd carried a secret that nearly destroyed me. 7 years of watching a predator circle my daughter, knowing exactly what he was, and being unable to simply tell her the truth. Because the truth, delivered at the wrong time, would have been rejected. Caryn would have chosen Logan over me. She would have cut me out of her life, married him anyway, and suffered the consequences alone. My desperate attempt to protect her would have accomplished the opposite. It would have delivered her directly into his hands. So I'd waited. I'd documented everything. Built an irrefutable case. Gathered evidence that even the most devoted, love-blind daughter couldn't deny. And I'd chosen my moment, the one opportunity where the truth would be undeniable, where Caryn would be surrounded by witnesses, where Logan couldn't manipulate or gaslight or explain away his own recorded words. It had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than losing Richard. Harder than raising a daughter alone. Harder than watching the man I loved die slowly in a hospital bed. Because I'd been forced to stand by silently while evil wrapped itself around my daughter, smiled at my dinner table, and plotted our destruction. A mother's instinct never lies. I'd known from the first time I watched that video that Logan was dangerous. Every cell in my body had screamed warnings. Every maternal instinct had told me to protect my daughter at any cost. But instinct wasn't enough. I needed proof. Evil often hides behind politeness. Logan had been so charming. So respectful. So seemingly perfect. He'd said all the right things, made all the right gestures, played the role of devoted boyfriend flawlessly. And beneath it all, he was a monster. How many predators are walking among us, I wondered, wearing masks of kindness while their true faces remain hidden? How many Caryns are in relationships with people who see them as assets to be exploited rather than people to be loved? The thought chilled me. Truth, no matter how delayed, destroys deception. For 7 years, Logan's lies had prevailed. He'd convinced Caryn he loved her. Convinced her friends he was trustworthy. Convinced society he was an upstanding citizen and successful professional. But lies, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually crumble beneath the weight of truth. One video. 15 minutes of Logan's real voice, real intentions, real cruelty, and his entire facade shattered. The truth had been worth waiting for. Love means protecting someone even when they don't know it. This, perhaps, was the hardest lesson. Real love, maternal love, sometimes means suffering in silence. Carrying unbearable burdens. making choices that aren't understood or appreciated until much later. I'd protected Caryn in ways she'd never know. The sleepless nights. The private investigations. The constant vigilance. The fear that gripped me every time she mentioned wedding plans or talked about her future with Logan. I protected her even when it meant she might hate me for it. Even when it meant risking our relationship. Because her safety mattered more than her approval. That's what mothers do. Yesterday, Caryn had stopped by my new house with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. We'd eaten on the patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, talking about her upcoming presentation, her new relationship, her plans for the scholarship fund's second year. Then, as darkness fell and the solar lights flickered on in my garden, she'd reached across the table and taken my hand. "Mom, I need to tell you something." I'd braced myself, uncertain what was coming. "For a long time after the wedding, I was angry with you," she said quietly. "Angry that you'd kept the truth from me for so long. Angry that you'd let me plan a wedding to a man you knew was dangerous. Angry that you hadn't just told me." My throat tightened. "I know. But Dr. Chen helped me understand something," Caryn continued. "If you'd told me earlier, even a year earlier, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought you were being controlling or jealous or couldn't stand to see me happy with someone who wasn't Dad. I would have chosen Logan and cut you out of my life." Tears streamed down her face. "You waited until the one moment when I couldn't deny the truth. When I was surrounded by witnesses. When his own words condemned him. You waited until I was safe. You're my daughter," I whispered. "I would do anything to protect you." "I know," she said, squeezing my hand. "And I'm finally ready to say thank you. Thank you for being patient when I know you wanted to scream. Thank you for gathering evidence when it would have been easier to confront him. Thank you for planning everything so carefully that he couldn't talk his way out of it." She stood and moved to my side of the table, pulling me into a tight embrace. "Thank you for being my guardian angel," she whispered into my hair. Even when I didn't know I needed one. We held each other and cried, tears of relief, gratitude, and love. Everything we'd endured had been worth it for this moment. This morning, sitting on my patio with my coffee, I thought about what I'd tell other mothers facing similar situations. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let politeness, social pressure, or fear of being seen as controlling silence your maternal intuition. Gather evidence. Instinct isn't enough. In our modern world, feelings are dismissed, but facts are undeniable. Document everything. Build your case carefully. Choose your moment. Truth delivered at the wrong time can backfire. Sometimes love means waiting for the exact right moment when your words will be heard and your evidence will be undeniable. Be prepared to be misunderstood. People may not understand your choices. Your child may be angry with you. Society may judge you. But if you're protecting someone you love, their eventual safety is worth temporary misunderstanding. Justice always comes, sometimes at the altar. Evil may triumph for a season, but truth is patient and persistent. Deception cannot stand forever. The reckoning will come. And when it does, you want to be ready. My phone buzzed with another text from Caryn. Presentation went perfectly. The board approved my proposal for expanding the mentorship program. We're going to help so many women, Mom. Dad would be so proud. I typed back, he absolutely would be. And I'm proud of you every single day. Love you to the moon and back, she replied. Dinner at your place this weekend? I want you to meet Marcus. I'd love that, I wrote, my heart full. I set down my phone and looked out at my garden, at the roses blooming despite the autumn chill, at the new life I'd built from the ashes of our nightmare. That day, standing in the chapel, pressing play on a video that would change everything, I didn't just save my daughter's wedding. I saved her future. I saved her from a lifetime with a man who saw her as prey. I saved her from financial ruin. I saved her from losing herself completely in someone else's manipulation. I saved her from a future where she might have watched me die in a staged accident, never knowing her husband was the architect. I saved her life. And in doing so, I reclaimed my own. The nightmare was over. The monster was caged. Justice had been served. And my daughter, my beautiful, brilliant, resilient daughter, was finally, truly free. Free to build her own future. Free to love without fear. Free to become whoever she wanted to be, unburdened by Logan's manipulation. Free to soar. I raised my coffee cup to the morning sun, to the new day, to the second chance we'd both been given. Here's to new beginnings, I whispered. And somewhere, I knew Richard was smiling. 3 years after the wedding that never happened, the Richard Hatchett Memorial Scholarship has supported 43 young women in pursuing education in finance and business. 12 graduates have started their own businesses. 8 work in financial counseling, helping other women escape predatory relationships. Caryn Hatchett married Marcus Chen in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Pamela walked her daughter down the aisle, and both women cried tears of joy. Logan Matthews remains incarcerated, serving his sentence. He has appealed twice. Both appeals were denied. Victoria Mendez was released on parole after 8 years and now works with victims' advocacy groups, speaking about financial manipulation and coercive control. Pamela Hatchett published a memoir titled, The Video I Couldn't Show Her, that became a bestseller and sparked national conversations about maternal protection, financial abuse, and long-term manipulation in relationships. Mother and daughter remain inseparable, living proof that love, patience, and strategic wisdom can triumph over even the most carefully constructed deception. And that day, standing in a chapel with her finger on a play button, Pamela Hatchett proved that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world.